So welcome back to another episode, and today I want to take a little look at a great game from my childhood, and that is Golvellius on the Sega Master System. Now, about 7 or 8 years ago, I did a real quick overview of Golvellius. I did a really quick review, and I've never been very happy with it. I never really got into the mechanics of the gameplay. I just said it was a real Zelda clone, and I don't think that does it a lot of justice. I think there's a lot of things going on in Golvellius, and I really want to talk about it today. So Golvellius was created in 1987 by Compile, and it was released on the MSX, then ported to the MSX2 and to the Sega Master System, which was called the Mark III in Japan. All three versions are very, very different. And also, Golvellius that we got over here was called the Valley of Doom, and it didn't have the Japanese FM sound. Now, before I get into the review, I just had to tell you my personal story about this. I've mentioned it before on the show, but it was really a big deal. Back when there wasn't a lot of video games, when there was the regular Nintendo and the Sega Master System out, we didn't have the Sega Genesis, the Super Nintendo, all of the things that we have now. There was only a few machines and a few games, and I only had a Nintendo, and my friend Swagger had a Sega Master System, and I went over there one day and we played some Wonder Boy, and I was introduced to the Master System, and I was like, wow, look at these graphics. This is really something else. It's a real interesting alternative to Nintendo because Nintendo was dominating. So we got on our skateboards, we went down to our local mall, and we decided to rent a few games. One of the games we rented, I got him to get this one. I always saw it behind the glass, and I was so excited about it. And reading the back of it, it sounded like this great action adventure role-playing game type of thing. And there wasn't a lot of these. Really, I only had played Zelda, but I wanted to do more of them. So I convinced him this is the game we had to get. We put our money together, which was like $4, and we rented the game for a few days. And we went back to his house. We had crappy noodles. We played Golvellius. And I remember when I first saw the opening title sequence, and this came on the screen, I was like, look at those anime graphics. Anime graphics in video games were a really big deal, and it really took me back. I was like, wow. And the game began, and we got onto this incredible adventure. And then I had to go home. And that was the end of Golvellius for me. And I showed you guys that I'd made my own Golvellius RPG books that I could play by myself by rolling dice. I had to continue the adventure somehow, and it was really, really a magical time, and it's something that I'll never quite forget. And also, just to show you guys, here's the Mark III version of it. This is what it looks like. Now, the story in Golvellius is a very simple one. The king has become very ill, and Princess Rena has headed down to the valley to see if she can find a cure to bring him back to health. But she goes missing, obviously, and there's many monsters in the land, and things are amok. It's absolute craziness out there, where a wanderer called Kalesis walks on by into this land, hears about the princess, and goes looking for her. So you start in the valley on your adventure, and this is where it seems exactly like Zelda. You can go up, down, left, right. It flips to the next screen. Totally like Zelda. So when I was playing it, I felt very at home for that fact, but there's a lot more to it. So when you go to the next screen, there's enemies everywhere. Now, if you hit certain objects or kill certain enemies, it opens up a hidden hole on the screen or a hidden cave. And in there, you can meet many different characters, like Annie and Randar. They'll replenish your health, but at a cost. There's also good old Dina the Vampire, and she'll give you gold. And the fairy will sometimes just give you useless information. There's another character, Winkle, who will give you your password. Unfortunately, there's no battery backup in the game. It's all passwords, so make sure you write them down correctly. There was many times my friend Andrew wrote the password down, and he was screaming. And there was old ladies everywhere in this game, and they all look identical. Some will give you Bibles. Honestly, Bibles. And that will increase the amount of money that you can hold on your person at any time. So here's one of the things that sets it apart from Zelda that makes it very, very different. Yes, it has the same overworld flipping screens, but if you go down certain caves, certain holes, then all of a sudden you're in side view mode. Really, you're going through side view mode, and you're fighting past certain monsters, killing blocks, fighting sub-bosses, which are really cool. There's some gigantic snakes that you fight, and you fight those snakes a lot, and they really do remind me of Wonder Boy in a lot of ways. And also in certain dungeons, there's another overhead view where the screen is constantly going up, so you have to keep on moving, and if you go the wrong way, you'll get caught on certain edges of the screen and automatically die before you even reach the boss. And speaking of bosses, there's 7 bosses. You need to get all of their crystals to get to the end dungeon of the game. But most of these bosses are really easy to defeat. They're not too hard. As long as you have enough health to fight them, they're usually not so bad. Now, there's a lot of items to collect in this game. A sword, shield, and when you get key items in the game, it will change the overworld music. And something else I want to talk about, the music in Golvellius. It is incredible. It was at the time, it still is to me now. It is a haunting melody that takes me back in time to 1988-89, a different time in my life, and all of the music is just so comforting to me to hear. I get a small tear when I hear some of this music. Now, there's a lot of items in this game. Some are really funny because this game was terribly translated. I can't lie about it. It adds to a bit of the charm, but sometimes it was ridiculous. Like the Ring of Invisibility is actually the Ring of Invincibility. As a younger guy, this confused the fuck out of us because we didn't have the internet. So we're like, what are we looking for? What is happening? Will it make us invisible? Is it invincible? What the hell's going on? And even finding certain items like the aqua boots that will let you walk in water, you had to hit a palm tree 3 times for the hole to open up to get the item. How could anybody figure that out before the internet? We had a lot of time on our hands, let me tell you. Now you finally get all the crystals and you're looking for Golvellius. Golvellius is the final bad guy in the game, the head honcho. You gotta love the Sega Master System back then because for a lot of games, you had to go and find the end boss. He just wasn't like, okay, I defeated him, I'll go to the next dungeon. You had to find where the next dungeon was. You really didn't know. I remember in Miracle Warriors, you had to go to this ridiculous place to figure out where to go next to drop in and to fight Tyran, which is the final boss of that game. Where in this game, you finally find your way, and it was really difficult to find the way to the final boss. It's in the top middle bit of the screen. You finally get there, you fight Golvellius, you better have full health, the best items, you better have everything for fighting him because the battle is extremely tough. After a long, difficult, insane battle with Golvellius, you finally defeat him. You send him to a grave. His days on this world are over. You rescue the princess, Reyna. Everything is happy again. But all of a sudden, all the crystals come together and go inside of Golvellius. Maybe anally, for all we know. I don't know. But he comes back to life, and now he is good Golvellius. He's a happy guy. He feels really bad about all the shitty things his minions were doing throughout the country. You go with him and the princess back to the castle. The king regains consciousness to give him the medical herbs that he was needing. Everything's great again. Now our main character Khaleesi at this point decides to go on another adventure out there, and Reyna decides to, join him. And as they're leaving, good guy Golvellius joins the party and wants to come along as well. And that's how the game ends, on such a happy note that the evil Golvellius, which is on this cover, he's right here, is now your best buddy and you're going on an adventure together. It was quite the surprising ending. I know it seems kind of rudimentary, but at the time it was like, oh wow, the evil bad guy is actually a good guy. Way, isn't that nice? I don't know. We hadn't played a lot of games at that point, so some of the storylines in these were a little bit of a twist ending, per se, and I thought it was pretty good, but Golvellius has always stayed with me over the years because I loved the Master System. I really did. In 88 and 89, it was a bit of a religious experience for me, being a young kid and playing some of these games. And as I say, at the time, we weren't glutted by thousands of games that hadn't happened yet. After this, we get the Super Nintendo, as I said, the Genesis, the N64, the Saturn, the GameCube. It just never stops after that. The Wii, can you see it all piling up? But this was a time in gaming that was a little bit quiet and a little bit special, and it's one that I really enjoy the nostalgia of the most because we weren't glutted by 1,000 games. We had Zelda, we had Golvellius, and that was awesome for me. I love them both. So anyways, guys, until next time.